In the shadows of the human soul, there exists a darkness so profound that even the bravest among us dare not venture there. Tonight, we descend into those shadows. I definitely encourage you to watch this video to the end. It's one of the most horrific Mississippi murders ever recorded. This is the story of a girl who stared death in the face and lived to tell the tale. Picture this. August 13th, 1996. A man stands in broad daylight, recording himself in an electronics store in Mobile, Alabama. Customers browse around him, clerks ring up sales, life continues its mundane rhythm. But what they don't know, what nobody knows, is that this ordinary-looking man is a killer on the run, confessing to a crime so brutal it would shake Mississippi to its very core. Those chilling words would become the soundtrack to one of the most horrific crimes in Southern history.
I never think about the consequences of what I do until after it's done. But that's what happens when you cross the line. You pay for it. I guess it's time. I love you.
Those chilling words would become the soundtrack to one of the most horrific crimes in Southern history. But this isn't just a story about evil. It's about survival. It's about an 18-year-old girl who would emerge from hell itself to ensure justice was served. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Themidnightburn. I'm your host, and tonight we unravel the twisted tale of Brooke Weber, the girl who escaped the butcher's box. 35 miles from that confession in Moss Point, Mississippi, a young woman pounds on a stranger's door, clutching a butcher knife with trembling hands. 18-year-old Brooke Weber points to a house across the street, her words lost in hysteria. Inside, police find something chilling, a human-sized box. But the real horror floats in the bayou behind the house. 88 pieces of human remains scattered like leaves across dark waters. The most grisly crime in Mississippi's history. And the only witness, a girl who had escaped her own coffin? Jeffrey Wolf, 21, lived the American dream in Houston with his father, Pascal, a good kid who loved dogs, football, and motorcycles. When he met Brooke Weber, his world lit up like fireworks. They'd known each other only weeks, but Jeffrey was smitten. On August 12th, 1996, he kissed his father goodbye for the final time. He and Brooke were heading to Mississippi on business. Drug business, to be exact, to collect money from friends.
We're gonna make a fun time out of it, but we were going to collect money.
Neither knew they were driving into a trap 6 years in the making. As darkness fell over Moss Point, Jeffrey and Brooke arrived at Gary Simmons' house. No porch light, just a shadow on the steps, waiting. Inside, Brooke sat at the kitchen table while the men talked business. Normal conversation, friendly even. Then,
I thought that they were just gonna have a discussion and then it would be done. That's when I heard the gunshots.
Gunfire. Jeffrey's blood splattered the blinds as Timothy Milano stood behind him, gun smoking. Gary's massive arms wrapped around Brooke like steel cables, carrying her away from Jeffrey's corpse. What Gary had waiting would test the very limits of human endurance, a custom-built coffin. For the living.
Years, just praying for a way out. I didn't think I was getting out of that box.
Hog-tied, gagged, sealed in Gary's custom-built metal tomb. For hours, Brooke existed in absolute darkness, pulled out only for unspeakable violence before being returned to that suffocating hell. Here's her chilling recollection of that event.
Basically told how well I performed sexually, determined if I lived or if I died.
Each time, Gary made it clear, her performance determined if she lived or died. In that box, time became meaningless. Would anyone ever find her? The darkness whispered that this metal coffin would be her grave. But Brooke possessed something Gary hadn't counted on, an unbreakable will to survive. And late that night, when fate presented one chance, she took it. To understand Gary Simmons, we journey back 6 years to 1990, when he married Lori. She thought she'd found a creative soul when she discovered his 50 binders of stories. But these weren't fairy tales. They were blueprints for torture. Every story detailed women held captive, broken, destroyed. When Lori recoiled in horror, Gary's chilling response. Gary Simmons would just say, "These are my fantasies. I have secrets you know nothing about." For years, Gary practiced what he preached. He'd choke Lori unconscious, tie her to their bed, trace her face with a butcher knife sharp enough to peel skin. When she finally escaped, she couldn't save everyone from his web of evil. Her own brother, Timothy Milano, became Gary's weapon, manipulated through threats into pulling that trigger. Lo and behold, Gary called Timothy over for some help, he said. But by 3:30 a.m., Timothy hadn't made it home. Lori frantically calls Gary's house, searching for her missing brother. The phone rings, and rings, but nobody answers. In her metal prison, Brooke awakens to that sound of Lori's phone calls. She realizes then she's alone. If she's ever escaping, this is her moment.
Heard the answering machine come on, and I knew nobody's there. And I was thinking in my mind, I was like, if you're ever gonna get out of here, now's the time.
Rope by rope, she fights free from her bonds. With her back against the coffin lid, she summons every ounce of strength, pushing, straining, refusing to die. The lid bursts open like a resurrection. Brooke grabs Gary's butcher knife and makes her declaration.
They were coming in when I was going out. I was gonna gut them, period. Because they weren't gonna kill me. I was not dying that day.
As she flees toward freedom, headlights sweep the road. Gary returns, discovers her escape, and vanishes into the night.
I ran so fast. About that time, I looked up, and Gary Simmons pulled back up at the house.
The hunter had become the hunted. Jeffrey's father received the call no parent should hear. He had to hear those words that they cut his son up into 80-something pieces, and only parts of him were left. The majority of Jeffrey had been fed to the alligators, but Gary's videotaped confession sealed his fate, and the trial hinged on Brooke's courage. Despite death threats from prison, despite hands shaking uncontrollably, she took the stand and buried Gary Simmons. Justice came swift. Gary Simmons got death. Timothy Milano got life without the possibility of parole. June 30th, 2012, Gary Simmons' veins was administered poisonous chemicals by the Mississippi Department of Corrections until he died. But for Brooke, the real sentence was just beginning. For 27 years, Brooke ran, changed her name, her look, her life. The blonde teenager became a brunette ghost, always looking over her shoulder. But in 2023, she made a choice that seemed impossible. She met Gary's ex-wife, Lori. And for the first time on that day, she learned that it was her ringing the phone that woke her up inside of that box. Those phone calls that made her realize no one was home and gave her the opportunity to escape. In that moment, Brooke understood the truth. She wasn't a victim who got lucky. She was an instrument of justice placed in that house to ensure evil didn't triumph. In the depths of that Mississippi bayou, among scattered remains and shattered dreams, we witness something profound, the moment when an ordinary girl becomes an extraordinary force of survival. Gary Simmons built his box to contain a life, but what he created was a crucible, where courage is forged in darkness. Jeffrey Wolf's memory lives on, not just in heartbreak, but in the justice his death brought to light. His sacrifice exposed a monster and saved countless future victims. Sometimes, fate deals us cards we never asked for. Sometimes we're forced to play a hand that seems impossible to win. In a world where predators believe they control the game, sometimes the dice have a way of rolling exactly where they need to. This has been the Midnight Burn. Until next time, catch the dice. They rolling.